In this episode, we're going to talk about the 5 obstacles you face in your 60s. Before we do that, I want to tell you a little bit about Joe and Sally, a 60-year-old couple who we know, and see if they sound familiar to you. Joe and Sally still work and have no kids at home anymore. Sally went back to teaching after her youngest of 3 went to elementary school. They did everything right. They maxed out their 401k and their 403b. They invested Joe's bonus each year instead of spending it. And they maxed out their kids' 529 college savings plan so they had money to pay for college. All 3 of their kids had now graduated. 2 of them were married, and they just welcomed their first grandson into the world. At work, many of Joe and Sally's coworkers were retiring, and the culture had really changed for the worse. Joe and Sally were considering retiring as well, but they just didn't have the financial confidence to do it, and they weren't sure why. Well, what I've discovered over the last 30 years of coaching couples through this transitional phase in their lives, which we refer to as the employment dependency threshold, is there are 5 big obstacles you face on your path to developing the supreme financial confidence that you need at this stage in your life. So let's take a moment to walk through them. The first is that the whole concept of retirement is new. What we always have to remember is that for anyone other than the Carnegies and the Rockefellers of the world, the whole concept of retirement, or being able to financially support you without having to work anymore, has only been around for about 75 years in human history. Before then, it didn't exist. People either worked until they passed away, or they lived with and were supported by their families. So there's no long history on how to do this. There's no textbook. So it's no wonder most people are struggling with it. The second big obstacle is a lack of good role models. Even with the explosion of information and education in the whole area of finance, only a tiny percentage of Americans are financially independent. According to the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College, the average 401k balances per household at age 65 is only $135,000, and half of U.S. households have none at all. It's unfortunate, but given this, it's extremely likely that anyone a little bit older than you can serve as a very good role model. The third obstacle eating away at your confidence is the financial media. We always have to remember that the financial media makes its money selling advertising, not by providing advice. So their job is to get you to tune in and to stay tuned in. And they do that by generating fear and confusion. So just a little subtle example is the way that they use points when talking about the stock market. You may recall that back in 1987, the Dow Jones fell 508 points in one day. Well, back then, that was a 22.5% drop in one day. Now that's a crash. Today, 508 points represents just a 2% drop, but they still report the points every day because it sounds like a much bigger deal to alarm and scare you. The fourth obstacle you may not have thought of is politicians. In order to capture your vote, politicians often deliver the well-received storyline that the world is unfair and that markets are rigged by a few powerful insiders. Politicians are very effective at generating envy toward those who are productive and financially disciplined, somehow suggesting that you've had an unfair advantage. This, of course, does nothing but undercut the pride and the confidence that you have earned and that you deserve to have. Finally, the last obstacle is that things are so much more complicated today when you're looking to transition over to phase 2 of your financial life. 40 years ago, most Americans worked for one company their entire lives, and they retired with a guaranteed pension and Social Security which covered most of their spending. There weren't many decisions to make, and consequently, not as many mistakes to avoid. Today, pensions are pretty much gone. So it's up to you to figure out, do you have enough built up? How much can you afford to spend? And then how do you manage your retirement bucket so it lasts? That's a pretty daunting task. So if you're approaching this employment dependency threshold and you'd like to begin to develop the confidence you need to successfully transition over the phase 2 of your financial life, I strongly recommend picking up a copy of my new book, The Relaxing Retirement Formula. As you will see in the book, a great place to start is by taking the Retirement Confidence Assessment, which you can download at the link below. I look forward to visiting with you on the next episode of Retirement Game Plan.